Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our friends over at Voice of Judah, Israel. The Apostle Paul says right in the epistle we've been studying now for almost a full year, the book of Romans, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Well, the country that gave the world the gospel doesn't have too many people living there right now that believe it, in fact. And so that's what Voice of Judah Israel is trying to change. And who knows? We have no idea. No man knows the hour, but we might be living in the final harvest, calling the Jewish people back home to their Messiah that the New Testament talks about. We might be living through that right now. But it's not just the 6.5 million Jews in Israel who need to hear the gospel. There's over 9 million Israelis who are estranged from the maker of heaven and earth as well. So if you want to join in Voice of Judah Israel, it is a messianic congregation. It meets the needs of the Israeli people with charitable outreach, but also preaching, teaching, discipling, catechizing with the word of God as well. Genesis to Revelation, all of it. If you want to join them and assist in their mission or just learn more about it, visit vojisrael.org/Steve. VOJ for Voice of Judah. That's the name of the pastor there at the church. vojisrael.org/Steve. Again, that's vojisrael.org/Steve. It is a Wednesday. You know what that means? Coming up, the final segment of the show, the return of the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. We have not talked to him for a couple of weeks. We've had some internal things to work out, but it'll be good to have Daniel back. I'm sure he's got enough ornery stored up now to at least get us through one segment coming up here towards the end of the show. We'll get to buy, sell, or hold as well. Your submissions that you've given to Aaron. He has then selected which ones, Todd, that you and I are going to consider here starting at the bottom of the hour. But let's kick this thing off as we always do with what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Progress in Ukraine.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the ball's in Russia's court now, according to various media outlets. However, overnight, Russia attacked the hometown of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, so who knows where the conflict goes from here. Back at home, President Trump says the ongoing fire bombings and vandalism campaigns against Tesla dealerships will be treated as acts of domestic terrorism.
I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company.
House of Representatives passed that continuing resolution yesterday. The CR heads to the Senate, where it needs 60 votes to pass. Elsewhere in Congress, check out this exchange between Congressman Keith Self, Bill Keating, and Tim McBride. Congressman McBride, as you're probably aware, is a man who pretends to be a woman, but Congressman Self isn't playing that game.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
The voice you're about to hear is that of Congressman Bill Keating.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Helmet sticker to Congressman Keith Self for not playing the self-deluding pronoun game. In other news, the U.S. Education Department announced Tuesday it's cutting about 50% of its workforce as President Trump proposed eliminating the agency altogether. Those actions will cut the department's workforce of about 4,100 at the start of the Trump administration in half. Senator Elissa Slotkin was who gave the Democrat response to President Trump's address to the joint session last week. Here she is this week on The View.
We're about to turn 250 years old. Right? We're still pretty young for a country. These are our like our angry teenage years, right? We are going through this push and pull where we're happy, we're sad, we want this, we want that. And what do you do when you have a teenager who's threatening themselves and others? You just try to get them through this period alive so that their brain can fully form and you can come back to kind of what
Are
a
you
country.
talking about Trump?
No, I'm talking about our country. We're pendulum swinging.
And finally, you may have heard King Charles of the UK has a new partnership with Apple Music where the king reveals the music that shaped him and his kingdom over the past generation. Well, that forthcoming track list was leaked to me by a very trusted source, and boy howdy, it's pretty interesting. The playlist includes classics like Sir Edward Elgar's Enigma variations, but you'll be surprised by the king's more contemporary tastes like Al Badru Laina. Other modern musical hits that shaped the UK on the King's playlist include Rahman Ya Rahman. And other hits include songs like Ya Nabi Salam Alaika. Pretty interesting. Check out King Charles's playlist on Apple Music. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron, never fear, you landed the plane. Well done. That I had any small part in that, inspired it.
Didn't you tweet about that this weekend?
Yes, yeah. That's a gift you've given back to me. Thank you.
It's not even parody. I mean, King Charles is basically a Muslim. Right? He basically is.
Watching
Has been
you
for like 25 years.
Watching you on camera when I brought this up, a trusted source, you went like this.
I went from where is this going to I'm very proud. All right, let's get to the montage. And I want to start at the top. All right, because it confirms exactly what my analysis was about this about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. Zelensky comes to the White House, rent, he gets to collect from us. And Trump and Vance are like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. You ungrateful bleep. Okay. And remember, I said at the time that Zelensky should have actually joined Trump in calling for peace to put the pressure on Russia. And then I had some feedback from some of you who think, that Trump actually favors Russia in the conflict. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't care if he does. I just, to me, the only difference between Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin are size of their militaries. I mean, Ukraine is the JV Russia, just another thugocracy of, oligarchs, just a different team of loyalty. One group of oligarchs that are subsidized by Davos and George Soros, and another group of oligarchs that are subsidized and kept in line by Vladimir Putin. So if you have a real strong feeling on that, you're welcome to your insanity. I don't. But I said to those who made that claim, I got that on social media quite a bit, that if you think that is true, that's even more reason for Zelensky to do what I suggested. I mean, in a negotiation, you want to flesh out the false objection. Most of the time when negotiations are at a standstill, it's because of a false objection. What do I mean by a false objection? Meaning someone has put forth an obstacle to closing a deal that isn't the real issue here. There's another issue. And a lot of times you have to flesh out what that false objection is so that you can get to the real heart of the matter of where the other side is coming from. So if you do think, and even if you do think that Trump doesn't, is pro-Russia in the conflict, even if you think that would actually be even more the reason for Zelensky to do what I advised a week and a half ago, because then in case of the framework you've put forward, then you call Trump's bluff. You call Trump's bluff and say, you're right, Mr. President, peace. We'll sign on right now. And then you maybe cause Donald Trump to backpedal. So this is exactly what Ukraine should have done. Basically, this should have been their position from January 21st on, once Donald Trump got inaugurated. Survived who knows how many other undisclosed assassination attempts to assume the presidency. So why? Because it's just obvious now. The pressure, if we're being objective, Regardless, now I don't care who controls the Donbas. I don't care who controls the Crimea. I don't care. But just as a general rule, if you're trying to get a ceasefire in a war, the pressure should probably be on the country that did the invading, regardless of whether or not the reasons why they did the invading are considered valid or not. But since they were the aggressor, that's kind of where the pressure should be to get the ceasefire to happen, right?
That's fine.
Yeah, they're the instigator. The reason why we are seeking a ceasefire in Ukraine is not because Ukraine invaded Russia, but because Russia invaded Ukraine. So the pressure, therefore, should naturally be on the instigator in said conflict. If a ceasefire is justified, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you went after somebody because they came after you and they're a threat. And therefore, we're not negotiating ceasefires in Fallujah in December of 2004, for example. We're going to finish the job, which we sadly didn't do when we had the chance. And the rest, as they say, is infamy. Okay? But you get my point. Right? Mm-hmm. In this case, since we're not really convinced of the moral certainty of either side here, there are actual regions of Ukraine that by popular vote were voted to be annexed by Russia. We just did a segment a week and a half ago about Greater Idaho, right? There are regions of Ukraine that wanted to be Greater Russia. They speak Russian. They wanted to be annexed by Russia. All right, so there's at least some Ukrainian territory here that's within dispute. Something tells me that Putin did not invade Ukraine just to acquire the territory within dispute. Can I get a witness probably on that?
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Okay. So the ceasefire pressure should be on the attacker most of the time and the instigator, and that's Russia. But all the pressure has been on Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine didn't want peace either. And in this case, Donald Trump called their false objection. The reason why the reason why the sacred democracies of the West that no longer exist in name only, democracies in name only. But the reason why they kept this war going and subsidized this war, knowing that Ukraine could never win it on its own, is that this was the strategy here was a war of attrition. To just keep this going, and reach some inflection point politically where it could be justified to put Ukraine within NATO. Some atrocity, some Lusitania got sunk. Something occurred that would justify some act of Russia and Putin not being a moron. Realize this. Which is probably why he did not go full bore with the full might of his military to subdue Ukraine, and has done this way more piecemeal than he probably intended to do when he invaded 3 years ago. He probably recognized after a few months, oh, this is the game. The game is to drag me into a slog and wait for me to unleash a level of brutality that would then justify the Western countries into making this a wider conflict. So we've been at this impasse because the Ukrainian leadership doesn't want peace either. It wants to drag the entire West into this conflict on its behalf. This is why I've been calling this a replay of World War I. The Archduke Ferdinand of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire gets assassinated in Serbia. Germany has an alliance with Austria-Hungary. The Austria-Hungary Empire gets pissed and gets involved. Germany, well, we got to maintain that alliance. Then the other half of the Habsburg family dynasty, well, we're in an alliance with them. And before you know it, the guns of August have all fired. For what? And we're to kill tens of millions of people for what? And 100 years later, nobody really knows. What we did accomplish, though, was setting the stage for arguably the worst military conflict in world history. But that's what came next. And one of the most openly demonic regimes we've ever seen on the face of the earth. So that was cool, I guess. And that was after we, put ourselves in a collective depression. So, everything worked out from that war. I think everything worked out. World War I, unfortunately, it wasn't the war to end all wars. It just set the stage for another whole century of wars. This was the plan. This has been their plan. And that's why Ukraine did not want peace either. That's why they didn't make this really wise decision 2 months ago. Now, Trump called their false objection. And Ukraine now is in the wise position it should have taken from the start. And now notice, for those of you that thought that Trump really wanted Russia to win the war, all the pressure now is on whom? Russia. We're now threatening sanctions against Russia and everything else. The pressure is now on Russia. Which seems to indicate, in the end, Trump didn't care who won the war, just wanted to make it stop. Before it ends up mushrooming into the kind of conflict that the leaders of your secret democracies in the West really wanted to have all along. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially the last half of that. Listen, this is nothing about this war is just Ukraine versus Russia. This is a that reverse Wakanda. There's a giant proxy war going on. Not great movies, but the premise underlying all of it is actually quite sound and brilliant. There's Phantom Menace stuff going on here. The WEF is the Trade Federation and all that conglomerate of people pushing buttons. This is madness, and it's also why this is. He's not autonomous. Zelensky, everything you said in the first half of that is absolutely right. If it was old school realpolitik, but that's not what's going on there. He's a former belly dancer, guys. He's not in charge there. He's doing what he's told. And the people in the WEF and everybody else who are the puppet masters absolutely want to go against this thing that they did with Biden as long as they could. Send him over here, try to embarrass Trump. Hey, let's face it. Things worked like that in the past. The House of Trump did come tumbling down. They tried to do it again. Didn't happen this time. But that's exactly why he went in there. It wasn't because Zelensky is just dumb. He did what he was told. Go in there and try to embarrass him. Get the press on board one more time. I mean, I don't think that's even like a guess. It's obvious what that is by now.
You noticed that Ukraine finally, all of a sudden, hey, after all, let's do a ceasefire. Mm-hmm. When did that happen? Trump tried to do this the easy way for them.
Yep.
He tried to do it the easy way. Hey, sign this minerals deal. Okay, we'll still have some vested interest in your territories as this country if you sign this minerals deal. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we can kind of do it your way, but we'll do it kind of our ways at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then Zelensky couldn't keep his big mouth shut in the Oval Office. And so Trump came to the conclusion, well, we're going to do this the hard way. And no more aid for you. No more aid. All of a sudden, you know what? Not going to share
intelligence? Nothing.
You know what? Actually, the thought of a ceasefire sounds pretty good. We talked about it. We prayed about it. We feel real good about it. After all, Mr. President, ceasefire sounds pretty good. So let's come to the table at Saudi Arabia and just forget that 2 weeks ago didn't even happen. Fresh start. It's amazing what a little bit of leverage and a little bit of actual leadership will do, and quick.
No doubt. No doubt. I know in the past we have denigrated this idea that what our side cares more about than anything else is a talking point, more than policy and action. And the reason why I've denigrated that is because I believe it is true. Just give me a talking point. I mean, I got a slew of emails from people yesterday who accused me of criticizing Thomas Massie because I want him to have a position of actual power and influence where he can do the kinds of things that are just simply not possible in Washington. And I realized, you guys just want a talking point. It just makes you feel good, self-righteous that Thomas Massie's doing the right thing. He's doing the right thing. It just has zero chance. There's lots of right things. I mean, doesn't mean it's the most prudent thing. I suppose every time your husband failed, maybe the right thing to say was, hey, you're a failure. Maybe that's not the most prudent thing for a wife to say. Or every time your kids didn't succeed in sports. I mean, I guess technically the right thing to say was, you guys failed. May not have always been the most prudent thing while they are out there, and crying and because they gave it their all and it wasn't good enough. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's moments of prudence. There's plenty of times in the Gospels, Jesus is like, hey, don't tell anybody about the miracle you just received. Now's not the time. Tells his disciples, my time has not yet come. There's a time and a place for prudence. You can disagree with me that this is one of those times with Massey, and I'm totally fine if you disagree with me on that. But to say that there's never such a time, you're wrong. There are times where prudence is its own principle. There are those times. In my opinion, this is casting pearls on the swine. It does no good. Nothing. And I said the same thing about Trump continuing to go on and on and on about Thomas Massey even this morning. Nothing's being served here. It's just, this is male ego stuff, and it's just everything is bad. There's no good. It's not like, the deal's been cut. It's not like Massey is going to convince 2 or 3 other members of the Freedom Caucus to join him in causing a government shutdown. So then the question becomes, what are we doing here? I don't know. That's why I would like Thomas Massey to be in the governor's mansion in Frankfort, Kentucky, where he has a lot more power to do these kinds of things. It can make things happen. He can be his own small K king. But there are moments, though. I don't want to make the fact that we have an obsession with sound bites over action to then make it sound like that words never matter. A lot more people know what Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death, than know the specifics of military campaigns during the Revolutionary War, right?
And look what we do for a living. Words matter a lot.
They do. I mean, especially when they ultimately lead to action. Mm-hmm. When they lead to action. Not just a talking point for talking point's sake, but it's going to lead to action.
I think that's our theme this year, right?
Lead.
There you go.
There you go. Yes. What happened yesterday with Congressman Keith Self of Indiana, I think is one of those times.
Absolutely.
This is one of those times. Right? If Reagan had said, I am paying for this microphone, and then lost the New Hampshire primary and not won the presidency, would we still be playing that clip?
No.
Now, if they had social media...
for different reasons.
Yes. If they had social media back in the winter of 1980, it would have gone viral, right? But if he then would have turned around, lost the New Hampshire primary, and then not been the Republican nominee, it wouldn't have resonated like it still does to this very day, right? Okay? So when words lead to or inspire action, they matter greatly. We've just lived in a generation on the right where we want the talking point for the talking point's sake. I want to feel self-righteous. I want to go to the water cooler and talk about how much more principled I am than my left-wing coworker, vis-a-vis own the libs, okay? And I'll say this too, I'm going to backtrack on what I've said about you can't win a war with memes. I'm going to backtrack on that a little bit. I mean, I got contacted by a well-known corporate media reporter today who wanted a quote on Pam Bondi and whether the GOP base is losing patience with her. And one of the things he said he noticed was social media is really turning on her. So again, things change and I still think, you can't, memes for memes' sake accomplish nothing. But I do think that I'm going to backtrack on some of my standoffishness that, hey, I love the memes. I laugh at them, share them too, but that's not any substitute for actual action. I actually do think that memes may have crossover effect in terms of messaging that leads to the right action. Wouldn't have said that even a few years ago. I'll backtrack on that a little bit now. But for Representative Self to say, Mr., and reiterate it, I can't tell you psychologically so much of what has happened to our culture is because despite all the connectedness we have right now with this device that we each all have, we have never felt more isolated as a people, as a species maybe, ever, than we do right now. Instead of using this for connectivity, many of us use this for isolation. To retreat to a world that doesn't require conflict rejection, initiative, risk. And we're largely disconnected from our fellow man and community. And that also creates a world where you start thinking, maybe I'm the only person who thinks this way. I'm isolated. Because here's the thing. You can have 1 million people on Twitter, X, share your meme. But if it's 1,500 people in Wyoming, 10,000 people in Florida, you see where I'm going with this? Okay. If they're scattered about, that's great for engagement, but it may not necessarily coalesce into something that produces a movement. Because the people who agree with you are spread out. Where you're going to primarily have the most impact is in the world immediately around you. This is why the Great Commission starts with first to Jerusalem, then to Judea, then to Samaria. You start inward and you work your way out. Anybody that's ever started a new business, when you're prospecting, what do they tell you to do? Start with your own network of people that you know who trust you. Anybody who's ever written a book, you want to write your very first one, what do they tell you to write? Start with something you know. Work your way out from there. With this thing in the world that this produces is we no longer start here and work our way up. We start down here and then there's no root. And so everything kind of happens up here, but rarely will take, it takes so much up here for something to actually take root in the culture. How many people have wanted to say to this tranny, demonic foolishness, you're Mr. So-and-so. You're Mrs. So-and-so. How many times? And you jump on this device, and you're going to find hundreds of thousands and millions of people spread out and scattered throughout the plains who agree with you. But here's the thing. When you walk down your street where you live, when you go to the office where you work, when you go to the grocery store where you shop, you go to the mall where you hang out, you look around and you have no idea how many of these people think like you do. And you start thinking, well, I'm probably isolated. So I'll keep it in this world here and share the meme while all literal hell breaks loose in the world that I'm actually directly connected to. One of the reasons, not to shamelessly plug, this is one of the reasons why Richie Meets the Rainbow is coming out later this year. The time has come to call the bluff. Just talked about Trump calling a bluff, and look what happened. Ukraine comes to the table. The time has come for the calling of the bluff. I really don't think you have all the support you claim to have. So, I'm in. Maybe you got the goods. Maybe you're sitting there on pocket aces or big slick. You might have it. You might have the nuts. But this time, I'm going to make you show me. You're going to have to show me you have it. What you saw Representative Self do there was call the bluff. And the guy next to him's losing his mind. Probably a guy hasn't been in a fight since about 1973, okay? And Representative Self's just like, we're adjourned. You can emote out on your own time. This is silly ridiculousness. I'm not entertaining this foolishness. We're out. And later, Mr. McBride, lunch. Be dismissive of this. When you confront it, don't take it seriously. Be dismissive. It's foolishness. Want to know why Christ spent his time at the temple debating his fellow Jews and not going to the temple of Saturn debating pagans? Total foolishness. Total foolishness. No point to that. Why was he silent when he went before King Herod? Looked at foolish. Everyone here's a fool. No point in even engaging them at all. Dismissiveness of this foolishness. We're not even going to entertain this on any level at all. And I look forward to letting you know it. Meekly, power under control. But no, I will not even entertain this. There needs to be way more bluff calling. Way more, I kind of think your emperor's naked. Let's find out. Way more, hey, prophets of Baal. Where's your demon god at? Is he on the toilet taking a dump? Where is he? Way past time to call the bluff. Let's start calling him. Congressman Self did. upcoming buy, sell, or hold brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know why we may have won this election. The fight to restore the nation is only just beginning, and now is the time to take a stand. One of the ways you can do so, when you can do so, is to strive to do business with people who share your value system, not just because they do, though, but because they have an excellent product first and foremost. I mean, after all, we're the people of meritocracy, so we should be striving for excellence in all things, even more than the culture at large. And I can promise you, excellence is what you're going to get from our friends over at Patriot Mobile. I did the same thing. I talked about Patriot Mobile for several years. I just had multiple different lines and everything else going on. And I just, man, it's going to be a hassle to switch. And one day we get that text from T-Mobile saying in 2020 they're going to start censoring texts for misinformation on the scamdemic. And I called Patriot Mobile that day and I said, all right, man, we're out. Tell me what we got to do. And I expected it to be a hassle. It wasn't. All right. They have an outstanding U.S.-based, meaning you understand them, customer service team. Keep your phone, switch your phone, upgrade your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you want to do. They'll customize it just for you. You'll get all the same coverage you get from the communists, but you don't have to directly give them your money anymore. And they do reinvest your money back in to your value system at Patriot Mobile. I've seen it all over the country. I've done numerous speaking engagements the last couple of years at events. And Patriot Mobile has been one of the sponsors of every single one of those kinds of events. All right. So you want to make the switch today? Get a free month of service to get you started. A free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, start there. Use the promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. And with that, it's time to play Buy, Sell, or Hold. As much as fun as I had doing this with Jill last week, this is the way it was meant to be played, where Aaron has actually gone through the submissions and chosen the best or most annoying ones, rather than me not having the time to do that. And so I'm literally just grab bagging stuff for me and Jill to comment on in real time. That's what happened last week. All right. Todd, you and I are going to decide after Aaron gives us those submissions, are we buying it? Are we selling it? All right. If at any point you use your hold, you are allowed to use it. I mean, it is called not just buy or sell, it is called buy, sell, or hold. But if at any point that you use your hold, the punishment for really a grievous sin against the dude code will be swift and harsh. And you will have to compete with Zelensky in a belly dancing contest judged by Senator Lindsey Graham. And let me just say, he's a tough judge, if you're picking up when I'm letting down. Because I'm letting you down right now.
He's thorough? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am saying a few things. Okay. That would be among them, yes.
Moving on.
All right. Moving on. Aaron, go ahead.
All right, we'll begin with this, which made me laugh out loud. We didn't start the fire. Says, as younger generations, or the younger generation, takes the helm in American Reformed evangelical churches, dispensationalism will give way to moderate preterism, which is a good thing because there will be fewer charts.
I'm Catholic.
No, man, like 6% of our audience got what was said there. Yeah. They are all laughing right now hysterically. Whether they're dispensationalist or reformed, whoever's in that 6% that got what this proposition said, they're all laughing at this, all right? Because this is very, very, very inside baseball. Okay. All right. So just really quick, define the term preterism for people that don't know. And there's various forms of preterism too. There's full preterism, partial preterism, but preterism essentially says at least some, if not most. Well, this is your church's view. So, I mean, you should be paying attention. This is your guys' catechesis, actually. So the preterism says at least some, if not most, if not all of the events attributed to future prophetic things the things that dispensationalism thinks will happen in the future have already occurred. So, for example, the book of Revelation was actually written before 70 AD by John, not in 95 AD. That's what Todd's church thinks, for example. And therefore, the vast majority of the references he makes, the Apostle John does, he makes to events that took place in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple and the division between non-Messianic and Messianic Jews during that period of time. That was the abomination of desolation, and the Christians fled. And we've done whole shows on that, but just to reset things.
What's the Reformed gentleman who had the same opinion? It was
That's
a great
Joel. Was it Joel? No, Gary DeMar.
Gary DeMar.
Yes. Gary DeMar. I always get Gary confused with Joel McDermott, who works with him at American Vision, or used to. But Gary DeMar, we did that evergreen, in 23?
It was a great evergreen.
And well, of course, that's your church's view, so you agree with all that kind of stuff. And so that's what that is a reference to, all right, for people that don't know.
Just to illustrate this, just go on Google right now, Google image search. Do a Google image search for moderate preterism, okay, and then look at the images that pop up. And then do another Google search for post-tribulation, just that, post-tribulation, and you will understand the joke about this submission. But that made me laugh out loud when I saw that yesterday.
Hey, something I learned this past week in some research I've been doing. You guys know the name Aleister Crowley?
Yeah.
Maybe the most notorious occultist, Satanist of the entire 20th century, right? His parents apparently were one of the original followers of John Nelson Darby. And John Nelson Darby, who's that? He is the one of the leaders of what we now call today premillennial dispensational theology.
Oh,
I mean, and that, we can't do guilt by association. Okay. All right. But that is, and his parents were really, really hyper religious, and he completely rebelled against all of that. It just goes to show how small of a world, man, that ultimately this can be. That's just crazy. But yeah.
All right, next we go to Timothy Stevens, who has this. This is a good template for a GOP congressman. 1, I can't do my job for fear of losing it. 2, and if I lose my job, I won't be able to do it. 3, therefore, I can't do my job because if I did, I might not be in a position to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
We've started off with a couple of bangers here, but that's largely true. Yes.
It'll be good, with Daniel coming on and talking about the budget, but like because that is like deep in that truth is deep in the bone marrow of the GOP. Like I fundamentally reject that Donald Trump, if he just tried hard enough because of this great win and this popularity, that he could move Congress.
So I'm glad you brought this up, because this is what I'm going to ask Daniel about when he's on the show.
I don't believe it. If he could, he would. Instead of doing all of these executive actions, why wouldn't you do that? That would be so transformative. You would. Donald Trump, he's a lot of things. He's not a moron. He's been down that track before. He's not putting all this hard work that he's just accomplished in the hands of Congress. Because that's true. That's not a joke. That's true.
See, Daniel yelled at me this morning and I felt bad. But this is what I'm going to ask him about on the show today. Let's game theory this out. All right. Let's say now, to grant Daniel's premise on a key point, based on what we've seen from the bulk of Donald Trump's public life, like most politicians, like all of them, but like 5 that have lived in Washington and worked in Washington, D.C. in our lifetimes, he's not averse to spending a lot of money. Can we we're all going to stipulate to that, right?
For sure.
Okay. I mean,
to the point of bankruptcy.
Yeah. I mean, Murray Rothbard and Daniel Trump or Donald Trump. I mean, let's stipulate to that he probably is totally fine with the money we're about to spend on a ideological, philosophical level. Let's stipulate to that.
He's not a conservative. Okay. He isn't.
So, but that's a question of motive. Okay. Yeah. Let's game theory out process. Let's say that Trump decided he was essentially going to use this as because if we're going to have a government shutdown risk, a legitimate one, not a fake one, but it could really happen. Mm-hmm. This becomes the inflection point of the rest of his presidency. The events that take place before and after this will determine the rest of his presidency. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's decide. Let's game theory out that Trump had decided, I'm going to put my thumb on the scale. We're going to have an actual budget. Okay. It's going to balance. in terms of its year-to-year spending. Not like everybody talks about, well, we had balanced budgets under Bill Clinton. We did in year-to-year spending at the end. We didn't put a dent in the existing deficit, all right? But year-to-year, pay-as-you-go, we're going to have a budget, and it's going to have pay-as-you-go budgeting, or at least we're going to take the Doge cuts and put those permanently into the budget. We're going to at least do that, all right? And I'm going to put my thumb on the scale, and I will not sign a budget, okay, unless you guys give me that, or there's going to be a shutdown. Okay. The Republicans right now have a 3-seat majority, I believe, in the House. Even with all the political capital Donald Trump has, would he be able to get all of them to vote for that?
No.
I thought about this yesterday.
No.
And I honestly, I don't know what the odds are that they would not, but I think they're not zero.
No, they're not zero, but fine. But
I don't know how high the odds are that there would be enough rebels to stop this. But you have to keep in mind, a lot of these guys could just retire and then just go work, have huge paying jobs in the private sector as lobbyists and everything else.
They have their own reverse Wakanda thing going on. Furthermore, with all the momentum set up with other people already doing hard things, your point yesterday applies to this about Pam Bondi. She has all the cover in the world to go do something bold. Is she doing it? Now you want to give the same responsibility to how many of her in Congress? Hundreds? Guys, learn a little bit about human nature, please.
That's what I want to talk to Daniel about. Let's walk through if he did what we would want him to do.
Yes.
And we would like him to do. If he did that, are we sure? And we still got to get 60 votes in a Senate, by the way. All right, to escape a filibuster. We have to still do that. Okay. So are we, he's going to be able to get Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins,
Who believes that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that's what we have to debate. Because to me, what is possible? Now, I'm in favor of stretching what we think is possible. Because if what is possible becomes our only principle, we're back to the same surrender caucus crap we've dealt with our entire lives, right? You see what I'm saying? Okay. But there are things that are not possible. Okay. There are things that are not possible. It's not possible for man to natively fly. So we had to create machinery to make it happen. Okay. But natively, can man still not fly? Yeah. It's still not possible natively. So I'm fine with expanding the definition of what is possible, but there are still definitions of what is possible. Would that work? Okay. Does he have the capital to essentially put his entire presidency on the line for this budget fight? Or would the risk be too great that he would lose and therefore be mortally wounded from a political capital standpoint the rest of his term because he's already pushing 80 and he's already a lame duck because he can't run again? I don't know the answer. I'm fascinated to have Daniel just game theory that out for us.
I'm pretty close to knowing the answer because of what you said at the top of the show, Steve. We just got done talking about how it's important for the men of the West to find the courage again to call a man a man. But sure, they're going to go out with all this courage and conviction in this gigantic budget fight and not fall prey to the same reverse Wakanda grift that they've going on and is the only reason they're there in Congress to be in the first place. Sure. You guys got to be kidding me with this nonsense.
Do we at least agree, though, at some point Trump is going to have to put his thumb on the scale with Congress to get something done?
Because
the question then becomes, what's the right?
Isn't that the prudence you talked about before?
Yes, what's the prudent point of it? Go ahead,
It's not this.
Yeah, this is a two-way street, and we have to remember that. And as happy overall as I am with the Trump administration right now, he is going to have to put his finger on the scale at some point. And this, you raised a good point. If you're just focusing on, well, this is not accomplishable, that you are falling into another ditch here. And what's my saying? Don't end up in ditches. Don't end up in ditches. Is 25% of the Doge cuts possible right now? Is 25% significant in the face of the rest of the government bloat and waste and fraud? Probably not. That's what I'm talking about here. We're looking for baby steps to show what is actually possible so that there is a precedent in the future. Say, hey, we cut this and we're still here. What else can we cut? Mm-hmm. That's how you start momentum. But you can't get momentum unless you start it somewhere.
And also, we're not guessing here. You and Chris Bedford had a very important conversation. How many times have we seen this movie, Steve?
Many.
This isn't theoretical. We know how it goes. You really going to do it again?
let me say this is a way more preferable argument.
Correct.
Than the one we would have been having if we lost, which is, how do you like your cell? I prefer this argument to the ones we were having the last couple of years.
Well, meanwhile, there's all kinds of people on the right who now are saying the opposite of what you're saying. Yeah, this is way worse than Biden. You're a lunatic.
Next. That was a great submission, Timothy, by the way.
It was.
Next, we go to Nikolaos Dimitriou Sentoukas, who says there will be a contraction in one of the 4 major pro sports leagues in the next 5 years. So you're allowed to make whatever you want of the word contraction.
No, also.
I'm pretty sure it's fair to say they meant there will be fewer teams.
Yeah, fewer
right?
teams. That's what a contraction means. Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean,
a contraction could mean, hey, sorry, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough audience. We're going to have to stop paying you as much.
Economic footprint kind of thing. I don't think that's what they meant.
I would even sell on that. I think the professional sports leagues are operating under the same economic as the federal government. The realities of the economic realities don't apply to them anymore. They have subsidizers and other reasons. They have other reasons for existing on some levels now, beyond just the fans.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just as immoral as Congress, absolutely, and there won't be contraction.
Yeah.
These are crackheads.
So I would actually sell on either meaning.
Next up, we have
it's way more likely there's going to be an NFL team in Davos.
Yeah. There you go.
Then they're going to contract teams.
Because that's what crackheads do. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
All right, in 90 seconds, we have a top 10 list. Top 10 names for Steve's fantasy paintball teams. This is from uncontexted Deace 2. Number 10, Battle Crocs.
That's a great name.
9, Angry Elves. 8, Lesbians in Space.
Lesbians in Space.
7, The Ugly Americans. 6, Vanta Black. 5, Nefarious Cheeseburgers.
Nice.
4, Pumpkin Spice Splat. 3, Steve's Stallions.
That's great. I love the single L. I see you.
2,
yes.
Lindsey Graham Sucks. And 1, Todd's Lament.
Number 2 operates at multiple levels.
Yes.
That's a phenomenal list.
Yes, it is.
I'm buying it.
That's a great Photoshop,
too. The name of my fantasy team since I started playing fantasy football in college has been Deace's Wolverines. I might have to change it to a couple of the names on here.
Battle Crocs.
Battle Crocs is great. That's been the name of my fantasy team.
Yeah,
it's been Deace's Wolverines for 30 years.
You've never played fantasy football, so you didn't know that, did you, Todd?
No. I did not.
I might change it to Battle Crocs, though.
I didn't know that, Aaron, but actually, in my soul, I did.
You did? Yes. On a cellular level, you knew.
Yes.
Subconsciously, yes.
Deace's Wolverines.
Wolverines! I loved Red Dawn as a kid, too. All right, we'll come back, and it'll be more Buy, Sell, or Hold. Stay tuned.
Yes or no, did you hear
the first trans woman to have a successful uterus transplant.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
But I felt God's presence with me as I made the decision to end 2 pregnancies.
No regard for human life!
I look like someone who has a mental disorder.
The garbage I see floating out there is just supportive.
Well, the big thing I learned doing this book is that the deep state is packed with patriots.
The impossible has happened!
Where HIV is now, like, if you are undetectable, like, you don't necessarily, like, have to disclose that.
Oh my gracious, Tim! How about that?
Indeed, we are just 5 days away from the return of Marxist madness, a tradition unlike any other. The field will be unveiled at this moment, 1:01 Eastern Time on Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. We're going to break it all down. Aaron has selected the field. He has seeded the field. We're going to learn it right when the rest of you do. You, Todd, and me, and then Jill Savage. We will be here breaking it all down. We're going to be going through those brackets just like the rest of America in real time with our picks, looking for upsets, maybe going chalk. But this is the real field that America needs. This is the real bracket that America needs, and I would dare even say wants. And we aim to give it to them.
Someone, God bless him, emailed me. I don't know how he has my email, but he emailed me over the weekend. Because last weekend I said, these are the rounds. We've got the Revolution Begins. We've got the Soviet 16, the Elitist 8, and the Fatal 4. Mm-hmm. He emailed me and he said, I heard you say Fatal 4, but that kind of loses the Marxist theme. I replied and I said, brother, thank you for the input. Marxism in its final form is always fatal.
Indeed. Absolutely, indeed. So we cannot wait. Coming up on Monday in the second hour, we unveil the field. I'm gonna see it with the rest of America on Monday, and then we turn it over to you, the people, to decide who is the people's champion, the winner of Marxist Madness. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email us, steve@stevedeace.com. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then also, if you love the podcast, please let everyone else know you love us too. Leave us a 5-star review. That's how you can do that. Thank you if you have. And then hit subscribe or on iTunes, follow. And that way, every time we do a new one of these shows, it shows up in your feed every single time. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. They've got the largest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers. They've got plants that fill all your yard needs, fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, so much more. Whatever you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. And they are fast. I mean, you can easily navigate their online catalog like Amy and I have in the past. It comes to you very fast as well. They make it easier for you to get your dream yard. Plus, you'll get support from the trained plant experts that will help you plan your landscape, the right plants for where you live, how to care for them, etc. So this spring, they've got the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code DACE at checkout. That's an additional 15% off from their everyday low prices and savings at fastgrowingtrees.com. Using the code DACE at checkout at fastgrowingtrees.com. Code DACE, fastgrowingtrees.com, code DACE. Now is the perfect time to plant. Use code DACE to save today. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, let's get back to it. Bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz joins us. Let's now have some more buy-seller hold.
Go back to Tiny Johnny, who says, just like Reagan wanted to outspend the Russians to bring them to their knees, Trump wants to out-tariff other countries to bring them to their economic knees.
That is an interesting analogy I had not thought of, actually.
It's the same game, which is why all along, going back to Trump's first term when this came up, and everybody wanted to default, this is not how you do modern economics. I said, well, that's because this is not completely modern economics. This is high-stakes gambling. Mm-hmm. And I think that's obvious. And everybody's, even the people on the right, again, with their Milton Friedman patch on, of like, people like certainty. The world's a complicated place, all right, full of a lot of nasty, nasty people. And it's always, this is like this. You guys are trying to be Scott Walker when he went, yeah, he was a real tough guy when he said, I like a balanced spreadsheet, all right? And he won that battle, all right? But then when it had to be more comprehensive and a lot of chainsaws juggling, look at how he flopped.
Yeah.
The same is true here, guys. This is not, yeah, he's playing chicken. It's going to get a little bit uncomfortable. That's a good thing, because this entire thing that we've been doing all along has been the stuff of spoiled brats who want to default responsibility on any number of fronts as long as possible. If I may refer once again to what my colleague here just said, I'm so glad a man was finally courageous by calling a man a man. That's where we're at, okay?
That's a great answer. I can't do better. So what he said.
Well, maybe this is a bad analogy, but you can pick it apart if you would like to. At minimum, is Donald Trump is what he's trying to do here is basically communicate to every country on the face of the planet, you do not have the innate right to just do business in America.
Or screw us over.
Or screw
and
us
call
over.
it doing business in America.
So, and here's kind of a better analogy. Let's pretend that I own a small electronics department store or a small electronics dealer. If I walked into Best Buy this morning and I offered pretty much the same products at a much lower price than what they are offering in their store, and I started trying to hawk my products in their store, what would happen next? I would get booted out and maybe arrested for doing that because they don't want, that's unfathomable that somebody would come in and do that. That's kind of what he's trying to do here. Now, if I had a custom line of products and I wanted to set up a distribution network using Best Buy stores, I would have to go through the process of maybe doing that and probably the margins would not be quite as favorable to me, but I would have the distribution to be able to do that. That's a better deal for everybody, right? I think at minimum, that's what he's trying to do. Bad analogy, buy, sell, or hold.
I think that's possible. I think that is possible as well. But let me throw this in. For both you and Tiny Johnny, because you're saying something similar, but from a different perspective, okay? For both you and Tiny Johnny to be correct, then I think what I'm about to say has to be correct too, all right? Because if this is not how things have operated, then I think there are real dangers with what Trump is doing. For what Trump is doing to work must then also mean that we have allowed the rest of the world to essentially screw us consistently just so we could have immediate access to cheaper goods.
Yes.
For that to be true, for what you said and what Tiny Johnny is asserting and what Trump is asserting, you guys are both kind of asserting variations of his, explanations that are variations of his theme. For the three of you to be right, then that would also then mean we have been a generation of Esau's.
Correct.
We're selling off our birthright, our the security of our borders, the heritage of our culture, okay, in order to have immediate access to cheap goods. If that's not true, then the juice is not worth the squeeze. And to me, that has to be true because the only reason why the United States asserting its dominance in the world would actually cause some form of short-term pain to the American people is that this has to be true. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Of course I do.
Except the soup is like blue meth, and that's a hell of a drug to get off of.
Yeah.
Starting with the elites in this country as well, because they are the ones who have benefited from globalism the most. I don't think there's any denying that.
We've been consumers instead of citizens.
Yes.
That's it.
So because I want to pay $300 for a 65-inch TV at Walmart as opposed to $500 or $600, you can have my culture, right? That's essentially what we're saying?
Yes.
Because that TV is not being made here, all right? So
do we know what a gender is now, Steve?
We're essentially saying you can have, so I can pay $300 for a 65-inch TV as opposed to $500. You can just literally soul rape my kids and import and turn my border into a fentanyl trading outpost.
I'm getting really riled up this year. But sure, we're going to balance the budget. I'm certain. Trump just puts his thumb on the scales. All that goes away. We believe really stupid stuff. Really dumb stuff.
Okay, let's move on. Aaron.
Next up, we go to Minnesota Nover, who says Doge may not result in a net reduction in spending, but by the end of the year, 500,000 federal workers will be no longer employed by the federal government.
I think that's entirely true. And I think that number could even be conservative. I'll buy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next.
Not to mention, what's the largest expense in any business, guys? Human resources. So that's a form of a cut. But yeah.
I mean, one way to do. I've always said, if you had to one step towards ultimately getting a handle on the federal budget, would not be instantly be cutting, but it would be steering the exact same amount of money temporarily in the form of block grants, things like that, to the states. With a sunset on that, you take this over in the way you say fit. Reorganize what you need to do that, because we've created this giant mess. It's not going to just Thanos snap going to go away. But this is the same kind of thinking there. You have to totally rearrange the deck chairs and hope it's not still the Titanic.
All right, one more from Tiny Johnny. I thought this one was good as well. Mount Rushmore of questions Lindsey Graham asks potential interns. Number 4, you ever seen a grown man naked? Number 3, do you hang out at the gymnasium? Number 2, ever been to a Turkish prison?
Yes, I see.
Number 1, do you like movies about gladiators?
It's just a rip and read from Airplane. That's all that is.
Yes, it is. And it's a darn good one, mind you.
Goodness, he didn't even.
You're going to rip something off, make it be greatness, so I will buy. Yes. And don't call me Shirley. Yes.
Next, Adrian Slade says, this season's Love is Blind is an indictment on the modern church. I'd never watched a single second of the show until this week.
I never even heard of it until 72 hours ago.
Buy.
Yeah.
On the modern church, on men, on women, on the West.
Other than that, though.
On everything. Yeah. But sure, we're going to balance the budget, guys. So dumb. Honestly, what are we doing? That's the reality of the world we live in. They can't balance anything.
I'll buy.
Next, Terry says, the attack on Twitter X was a CIA deep state operation.
Entirely possible. It's every bit as possible. That's true. It's every bit as possible with some Ukrainian zealots, and every bit possible with some Russia, KGB leftover operation, make it look like it was Ukrainian, zealots. This is the world in which we are currently mired in right now. And listen, it has taken me a while, and I keep having to remind myself, even on the tariff thing, it's not 1989. I keep having to remind myself of this.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just as cut and dried as the Iron Curtain versus the West. And it's not just, I wish it were, man, things were so much simpler, but it's not.
This question reminds me of your question yesterday. What's Pam Bondi doing again, Steve?
I have no clue what she's doing right now. I don't know that anybody knows.
If this question is even remotely true,
yes,
shouldn't she be doing something?
I would say, yeah. I would think so, yeah. Same for Kash Patel, by the way.
All right. Moving on. Mills says, Steve went normie sports bro, throwing Massey under the bus because he has principles.
Let me try this. In brief, there are moments when prudence is a principle. Okay? In the Gospels, Jesus says on several occasions, keep this quiet. Don't tell anybody about this. My time has not yet come. In the fullness of time, or so that all righteousness would be fulfilled. Those are statements of prudence. Jesus didn't just become Messiah when he finally admitted to Caiaphas at his hearing, I am Messiah. Was that the moment? Was he Messiah before that?
Was.
Yeah, he was Messiah in utero. Okay? So he was Messiah long before this. But that's the most formal declaration of it, is in that setting. The moment had come. To everything there is a time and a season. I'm arguing that this moment was a moment of prudence. You can disagree with that. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. But what there is no disagreement is that there are moments for prudence. Every time you don't like what your wife is wearing, do you tell her every single time? Because if you do, you probably don't have a wife. Every time your kids screw up or do something wrong or fail at something, do you call them a failure every single time? Every time? Probably not. Do you tell your boss what you think every single time? No filter at all? Always? Probably not. There are moments of prudence. It's not like there were a handful of guys that were holding out with Congressman Massey here. And if there were, let's have a shutdown, let's have the fight, I'm all in. There wasn't. Nor would I argue that this was anything. This keeps being compared to what he did during COVID, which was heroic. This is nothing like COVID. We have done this CR thing every 6 months or 3 months or 9 months for decades. We're going to do it again a couple times. What we saw take place at this juncture 5 years ago was unprecedented in human history, where literally every freedom we held dear was now suddenly in peril, with no real understanding or timetable of how or when we'd ever get them back. So making points for posterity in a moment like that, I would argue, were very prudent, whether they were going to be successful or not. But in this period, it's very clear this was going nowhere. We're not even sure the continuing resolution Trump wants will even get 60 votes in the Senate anyway, let alone with what Thomas Massie wants. So that's all I'm arguing, prudence. And guess what? Thomas Massie is not the alpha in this relationship. Trump is. He has executive power. I want Thomas Massie to have executive power so when in Kentucky, he can be the alpha of those relationships. And when you're the alpha of those relationships, you can make things happen that you can't make when you're the subordinate. My fear is that by alienating Trump at this level, he will just cause Trump, when that gubernatorial primary takes place in, 27? I think it's an off year. He'll just incentivize him to just join McConnell and his forces and going all in to oppose him. I could be wrong about all of that. It's possible. You might be right. But the idea that these sorts of prudent calculations in human life are never considerations. What do you do when you're not posting on X? You never? Hey, Norm, saw your wife. She looked like crap. There's never, maybe, and she probably did look like crap. Did you stop Norm out in your front, in your cul-de-sac to tell him? There's never prudent moments, ever. Never. Touch some grass.
Oh, there's the problem.
Next, putting Steve under the microscope again. Janet says this. Steve posted his question asking Catholics why we ask saints to intercede for us, knowing that it would expose Protestants' pride, because he knew he couldn't just allow Catholics to respond, but had to tell us how we were all wrong.
Come on.
What happened is my son-in-law asked me about Ash Wednesday and where it came from in the tradition. I posted so I looked into more of it than I knew before. I posted a question about that on Friday. Said, hey, this thing goes all the way back to the 4th century. As if you're a Protestant, what do you think of this? And then I thought, well, I think it would be kind of fair to maybe then just, flip the script and let the other side defend one of their positions that isn't held by the other side. It really didn't go any deeper.
There wasn't some 4-dimensional plot that you had cooked up to try to embarrass Protestants or Catholics or both.
It just really was it was really just
you
that.
Don't spend your time conniving and planning how you could piss off the most people.
I really don't. It's just a gift, I guess.
People really...
Someone sent me on next to everybody hates you. I'm like, it's true. Yeah.
People really resent to how we do Romans 1. I think a lot of people have a real problem that we can do this week after week after week, civilly, respectfully, while passionately and aggressively at the same time in terms of iron sharpens iron. Yeah, I mean, it was a really good question. I responded to it because it was I don't respond to all of them because it offered an opportunity to share some information, of course, but then the same kind of people that just demand. Yes, it's a rock fight, but it doesn't have to be stupid and instantly. Everybody just demands in the name of God. It has to be as dumb as possible. We got real issues, but we're gonna balance the budget.
I think we found Todd's next being the sports bros are like.
How do we
safe for March Madness? Thank God for that budget fight. We're safe for March Madness. To the couch we go. Erzin's off our case.
All right. Next, we go to Thucydides, I think. Those who object to quote-unquote platforming objectionable viewpoints are the moral equivalent to those who seek to eliminate misinformation, regardless of intent or outcome. Gavin Newsom having Charlie Kirk on his program or his podcast is objectively a good for our society.
Overall,
I agree with that. Now, I do think, and there are some things that, depending on the context, I'm not going to platform. I'm not going to give a child pornographer a platform to make a case for why it's valid to be a minor attracted person. I'm not going to do that. I think it goes back to the conversation we had about the clear now. We've gone in the last couple of years. We have clearly now gone from scientific inquiry. There's phenomena we can't explain, violating the laws of physics. Are we alone in the universe? To we're now summoning beings and giving a higher consciousness. See how that turned up? See what I'm saying? And so now I do think we have to have a calculation of how much do we cover this, because we're elevating an occultic religion that is clearly just moved beyond scientific inquiry to here are your new gods, right? We had that conversation in another context. Same thing applies to basically every single context. All right. I am charged with not causing the lesser brother to stumble. And here's the thing. I'm not given a specific explanation of what that means. You know why? Because it can mean different things at different times in different eras of human history to different audiences. Okay? So no, we're not going to just come now and reason together about being a minor attracted person. We're not going to do that. Right? If someone who claimed to be a minor attracted person was seeking redemption, forgiveness, that's a different conversation, And then in the course of that conversation, if it turned out that that was a canard and not real, well, that would get exposed and we would then adjust the conversation accordingly, right? So it's not that there is to be no standard, but in the era that we have, I mean, anything that doesn't immediately tell me that, I'm a snowflake and a unique thing that God just, could not have done this thing called creation without, we have a tendency to think that's unconventional and controversial. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with the heart of this because of the era in which we're in, but I would not take it so far as to mean there are no things whatsoever that aren't worthy of platforming. I don't agree with that either. I just think we're pretty far afield from that in our given era.
And we've been trying to do on your show, per your order, what he's talking about for a long time, but no one will come on and do that.
Yeah, guys, we've done these so many times off the air that you don't even know. All right. So many times of extended invitations. I was stunned when Ray agreed to come on. I mean, stunned. Just because conservatively, 95% of the time that we've tried to do these kinds of things, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Or no answer at all.
Yeah.
All right. This is a very odd one, but I thought it was interesting. JJ Barron 44 says, top 5 ways Steve handles commercial breaks with guests. Number 1, the bromance continues. You're just yucking it up during the breaks.
I almost never talk to guests during breaks unless they need to ask me a question.
Number 2, crickets and silence.
That's often the case.
Yes. Number 3, genuinely nice with small talk before returning to the live show to lay the smack down.
That's happened a couple of times, but not very often. Number 2 is way more often.
Number 4, excessive bathroom breaks.
I'm just peeing. I'm in between urinals, so that's true. Yes.
Number 5, talking all things Michigan, not with the guests, sometimes with Todd and I.
Yeah, especially if I feel like Todd is too relaxed.
Yeah.
Yes. Facts.
All right. So based on that, are we buying or selling that?
Sell.
Okay. All right.
Zach Todd says, top 5 nefarious sequel names. Number 1, Nefarious. 2, Nefarious Harder.
I love that one. Yes.
Number 2, Nefarious Strikes Back.
I like that one.
Number 3, Nefarious the Musical.
La Caja Fall. Nefarious La Caja Fall.
Nice. Number 4, Too Fast, Too Nefarious.
That's actually kind of good. Actually, I kind of like that one.
Number 5, Nefarious 2, The Wrath of Nefarious.
Yeah. I like that one too, but Too Fast, Too Nefarious is pretty good. Where's Nefarious 2, Demonic Boogaloo? Where's that one at?
I think it's already been taken.
What do you guys think? You like Nefarious 2, Demonic Boogaloo? Do you like that one?
Whatever makes the coattails bigger, my friend.
How about MRSA 2? Coma incoming.
Gosh.
Why don't we do that?
I don't think anybody wants that, for your sake.
I wouldn't necessarily say nobody wants that.
I know what you're saying. Picking up what you're putting down. Joe Allen says, Rosie O'Donnell leaving the country might be the best example of winning yet.
I mean, when I saw that she moved to Ireland, my first thought was, can I just go vote for Trump again? Can I just do that again? I mean, we're gonna self-sort. I mean, I'm fine just voting for Trump every day if we get this level of self-sorting. Just having a daily reminder.
Well, if that has coattails, yes, more.
I'll buy.
All right.
Yes.
Jay Ford says, Mount Rushmore of achievements by the Department of Education. Number 1, just. Number 2, kidding. Number 3, theirs. Number 4, none.
Bye.
That is excellent. And whoever on the Trump comms team came up with the talking point, which is true, but it's one of those things people just didn't realize because it's so, out in the open. But whoever on the Trump's comm team came up with the counter that no teachers are paid or hired by the Department of Education. So it has no impact on teachers whatsoever. That is a brilliant talking point. And it's just so instantly disarms the other side and calls BS on this. And well, then what if, because the average American's going to look at, well, then why do we have a Department of Education? What's it do then?
Yeah.
Well, gather around the fire, boys and girls. We'll let you know what it does. Okay. USAID sound familiar? Because it's just a giant patronage scheme that then incentivizes the soul rape of your children. Essentially, that's really all that exists today.
That's why even just to mess with them, it's worth not actually slashing the money side of things immediately. We're cutting this department, but its entire budget, we're going to 50 block grants going to teachers, for just right in their face. Make them say that you are evil Hitler when you got more money for a year.
Yes.
Make them say it.
It's what our governor did the year after she got the school choice done.
Yeah,
she then pushed through a merit-based, the largest teacher pay increase in Iowa history, just to call their bluff on everything. Yes. Yeah.
Next, we go to Ben Carstens, who says the best possible result of AI will be when you can no longer trust anyone you're texting or talking to is really them, and the only trusted form of communication goes back to in person.
I think that's ultimately where this will go. We can't outrun the old magic. That we're really going to create almost a black market premium on person-to-person exchange of information and contact again. I agree to some degree. So I'll buy this. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
One more.
I think we're going to have to save this. Let's tease it though.
Okay.
Matt Sisk says, terms such as orthodoxy, heterodoxy, heresy, etc., are ultimately meaningless under a Protestant framework, since there's no unifying authority of interpretation, with each person seeking teachers to suit their own likings. Buy, sell, or hold. We'll get to that in the overtime.
That should be fun.
Buy.
That should be fun. Sell. And in fact, you have the exact problem you're citing exists in the other framework.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Jesuits?
Yeah. What you're asking people to do is not be human beings. Whether they're wearing a garb or of a certain sect of the church, or they're wearing the youth pastor uniform of America. You can't ask people not to be humans. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends at My Patriot Supply. Are you ready for the next time that can never happen here? Happens here. The next time that can never happen to me may sadly happen to you. Hey, I talked about My Patriot Supply on the show for several years, but I'm like, even after COVID, I'm like, I live in Iowa. Then I saw what happened to the people of Western Carolina, which is a place a lot like Iowa, just hillier. And I'm like, well, that can happen to them. It can happen anywhere. So I contacted our friends at My Patriot Supply. Had me hook me up with everything they had, including the 4-week emergency food kit. If you want to get that 4-week emergency food kit, 2,000 plus calories per day. That includes breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks, the full complement of what you need of nutrition, just in case you're the next one to realize that these are unprecedented times. All right?
Bing.
Thank you, Todd. Go to preparewithdace.com right now. All right, that's preparewithdace.com right now. No last minute panic. No empty shelves, just knowing you're covered. Stock up today before this deal disappears. All right, get the 4-week now emergency food kit. Stays good for up to 25 years. 4-week emergency food kit right now. All right, plus an extra 12 days of food for free. All right, at preparewithdace.com. That's preparewithdace.com. Let's welcome in the prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. It is good to see you, my friend. I've got to get your reaction to a clip. Just a quick reaction to a clip from Donald Trump just a few minutes ago, referring to Chuck Schumer as a, quote, Palestinian who used to be Jewish, but he's a Palestinian. Okay. I have to get your reaction to that. Go ahead. Can he not hear me?
Daniel, you got us?
You got us?
Oh, I just thought that was his reaction.
I got you now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You just paralyzed me there. Anyway, Steve, look. I only like looking at outcomes and not trolling, but even I have my limitations. For me, this has been my whole life. I've been obsessed with this. I called these guys J for J, Jews for Jihad.
Nice.
So, that would be the next level for him. This guy's entire purpose there is to promote Hamas, but then he walks around and enmeshes himself in his heritage there. That was great. That is the best troll, because what's he supposed to say? What's he supposed to say now? How dare you call me a Palestinian, and then tick off his own party, which loves them?
Yeah.
So, I am all down with that. And again, like you noted, that has policy implications, because the entire idea is that both parties, at least at an administrative level for years, has exalted a Palestinian people as a distinct existing people deserving of a state. So I think that's huge progress in that sense. But the troll of liberal Jews is like, look, you're not going to get a complaint out of me.
All right. I want to do a game theory with you. All right. We are, listen, I completely stipulate that Trump wants to spend the money in the budget, wants to spend this money. All right. Does not want to cut the government demonstrably. I will grant that. I think his track record of public service indicates that. And I think history shows no one ever loses an election on a federal level because they spend too much money. And Trump clearly has seen the same history and wants to do that. All right. So setting aside motivation for a second, I am curious, though, if he did decide to expend political capital on a real budget with real cuts, given the narrow margins Republicans have, how duplicitous most of these Republicans are, the fact that there's only a 3-seat majority in the House, you need 60 to do anything to avoid getting filibustered in the Senate. Okay, what could he? Because to me, this would be the inflection point of his presidency. It would be clear he'd have to be willing to shut the government down to truly capitalize on the leverage that he has, right? So there's a possibility that bluff might get called. Okay. Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, they all fall in line. No, there's not 4 members of the Bill Kristol or Main Street faction that are like, you know what, I'll just say no, retire so he can't take me out in a primary and get a nice gravy train job here on K Street next year and make the same money I'm making now, but now it'll be above board and honest. Could he really get it done, really, if he wanted to? We have doubts, given the nature of the GOP coalition. And now, what's the risk? I don't know, but I don't think it's zero, because if he tries it and it doesn't work, it's an immense blow to his political capital moving forward, and it'll be seen as he's already a lame duck, can't move his own party, et cetera, et cetera. We also agree that at some point he's going to have to do this. Otherwise, forget the budget. All the stuff he wants to do will not become law. Yeah. At some point, he's got to have to pick something that is worthy of his political capital. The 3 of us agree on that. We're just not sure that this is the one that he could actually get them to follow the line if he wanted to. But walk us through it. What do you think?
So I think your last point is a good starting point, because it's not about any one leverage point, but it's in totality. At some point, you're going to have a very strong message, drive it home. This is what I want. This is how we get it done. But if you're going to be like every single appropriation deadline, because we don't have 60 votes, I can't run up against a shutdown, even to the levels and dates that we used to do, 10, 15 years ago, then you're done. There's nothing. So the debt ceiling was our leverage, but now we use it as a cudgel to beat ourselves with. Oh my gosh, I'm terrified of it. So that's done. Authorization bills, nothing. Budget reconciliation is all about taxes. So then what are we going to do? So it's got to be somewhere in totality. I don't mind strategically punting on one thing to fight on another thing, but I don't think that's what's going on, and there's no evidence that's going on. As far as your broader point, I mean, Steve, the leverage Trump has in the party now versus the first term is night and day. There is no example of him ever exerting influence over the rhinos, because it's only been a few months, so we don't have anything to go off of. Although what I would tell you is when it came to the nominees, right, his cabinet nominees, there was growing reticence to them. You saw with Joni Ernst, you saw with Bill Cassidy, it was starting to build, and it collapsed. And Trump himself didn't even give them the Chip Roy treatment and call them out, but more his proxies did, and they collapsed. And, you got RFK, you got Tulsi Gabbard, you got every one of them wound up being confirmed, even except after these allegations came out. And so my point is, I would be very shocked if he were to consistently exert himself, go around the country campaigning on his message, kind of the style that he did at that address before Congress, which I think we all agree is effective even against Democrats in totality in the broad electorate, much less within the Republican Party. Of course it needs to be done. And so now there's the House and the Senate. The House, they're like chattel. Okay, they go in waves. They go along. I see it in legislatures too. The lower house, they go all or nothing. If Trump were to demand from Johnson, this is what I want, it would be very hard for them to stand for re-election without that. As far as the Senate, you're right about Collins and Murkowski, because you saw that with the nominees. But aside from them, I mean, what? So you're going to shut the government down over funding Hamas and USAID? You know what I'm saying? At some point, you got to have a message. You're not going to do it over Social Security, but the point is, if you take that to its logical conclusion, that would mean that Schumer could say, I'm going to oppose even this unless you have a rider preventing Elon from doing X, Y, and Z. We're not going to vote for it. You know what I mean? At some point, you can't say, I cannot risk a government shutdown. So what I don't want this to be is an exercise in gaslighting what is and isn't happening. Steve, we could debate the why, but the what is clear. This is coming from Trump. It came from him in December. It came from him in the first term. This is not like Don Bacon and Dusty Johnson got up there and said, like, oh, I liked USAID. And Trump was like, man, shucks, I really wanted to put it in there, but, I don't want to pick the fight now. This was all written from the White House from day one.
If you were advising him and he said, I believe I've got one moment in this Congress to exert existential level of leverage to make an example. And of course, anytime you do that, listen, you might be Mike Tyson getting in the ring with, Mike Tyson in his prime, getting in the ring with a grown man that is nowhere near your match. But once you step into the ring, there's at least some odds, because that is still a grown man. He has muscle mass too. There's at least some odds he could just get lucky, hit you right in the nose and break one time, and break your nose, and this is the one time that happens because you're in the ring. Once you get in the ring, there is some risk, right? It may not be a high risk, but once you go into the ring, there is risk. The other person isn't just going to stand there and say, please, keep hitting me, right? They're gonna try to punch back, even if you are way better than them and they can't land a punch. The odds, there is some risk that they will land that one punch that one day, right? Okay. So if he went to you and he said, craft for me the moment when I need to do that, what would you tell him that moment is? And lay out how you would do it.
Yeah, the moment is obviously budget reconciliation, right? Because there you're not dealing with what we're talking about now with, I need Democrat votes, the filibuster. It's all Republicans. This is your one opportunity. Here's what I think people are missing. Right now, the analogy of the ring is not so good because he's going to get punched whether he steps in or not. There is a built-in recession at high prices that I was warning about all last year, and that has been baked for a long time. That's number one. So you're going to have to...
Which he is kind of passive-aggressively warning about. Hey, we're in a transition period. Bear with me. He's passive-aggressively warning about this.
And that leads to my number two, which is I was concerned Trump would come in and just deal with no men and female sports, the cartels, Lincoln Riley's murder, the easy things. But look, whether you agree or disagree, I mean, he's at least signaling that he's going to cut half the workforce. The tariffs, putting tariffs on everyone, and I am very pleasantly surprised in the macro messaging, although I disagree with what they're expending it on, is this message that the economy is not the stock market. We're going to have to be willing to wean ourselves off. Bissett called it detox. I love that. So you set the table, go eat, do healthcare reform. Okay, repeal Obamacare, get inflation down, do stuff for that. You could message it. Premiums have doubled since Obamacare. The talking points write themselves. Crush these guys. They have no agency outside of Trump. Right now, there's no such thing as lukewarm hell. He's going big. He's going very big. But I'm concerned it's on things that are not going to get you anything in the long run, and you're just going to suffer the liabilities. Now, I believe most of the recession was baked. I don't think the tariffs are going to help, and they will harm a little bit. So you may as well do big things for real, Steve. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, Daniel, can you imagine the GDP if we cut spending and dealt with healthcare? Well, look what's happening now anyway. I mean, that's what's so bizarre about this. We're not living in the late 90s where he could just coast a couple of issues here and, cost of living is low. Everyone's fine. I don't want to risk a fight. He's already in that ring. You just may as well throw the punch.
I've got a minute then. Tell us then why you think he would not do what you just suggested here.
I just don't think there are people around him advising it. I mean, like I said, my pillars would be repealing every green energy regulation. So that's deregulation. Small business tax cuts, not just the replication of what we've done. That's prong 2. Prong 3 is healthcare and welfare reform, weaning people off welfare, but also prong 4, America first, getting rid of the foreign workers that depress wages. My gosh, for the political capital that they're willing to expend on the tariffs. If you want to be like that, do it on the foreign labor side. This is what's so bizarre to me. I'm genuinely bothered by it because they're literally doing what I wanted them to do and not worry about the stock market. That was a criticism of mine in his first term. So freaking do it. I just don't think there's people around him that think this way. I don't know why, but I mean, not at high levels, not at high enough levels. And I just don't think this is on his radar. I also think he does not understand the scale and scope of the federal budget. Like, he thinks tariffs will balance the budget. So on the one hand, they're saying they're not doing it. It's just a leverage to get the other tariffs reciprocal down. But then they're using it as an end to itself, which contradicts it by saying this is how we're going to rebuild America and get in revenue, and you're going to become so rich you don't know what to do with it. So I'm not really sure what to do with that, Steve. All I know is he's expending a hell of a lot of political capital, so he may as well do it. Doge is freaking doing it, so why fund it? And then have the court screw with you once you sign it into law. They'll say, they're going to turn against him even more. They're going to say you can't do that. That's another big wild card, Steve. Watch out in the next couple of weeks for an injunction on the existence of Doge itself.
Oh, I'm shocked they haven't tried that. Honestly,
it's in court.
I'm kind of surprised the judge just didn't say, "Hey, I don't even care if there is a case. I'm just going to do it." I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. Exactly. Woke up this morning and chose violence. That's my legal. That's my legal standing.
Andrew Jackson.
Yes.
Just rip it out of the wall.
Yes.
I mean, and again, I don't blame Trump for that, but you see what I'm saying? If the courts are going to do that, Congress here at some point. Right now, it's a lot better than under a Democrat, of course, and it was the first term. But you got to get something enduring, otherwise it gets reversed.
All right, thank you, my friend. Good to see you as always. Take care.
See you later.
Yep. Listening to Daniel, I thought he made a really good case. We're short on time. I'm just going to come to the conclusion that Trump just really believes in tariffs as
that's the
fundamental to his belief system.
That I had too.
And that is why he's going to spend his political capital there. He's been talking about it for 40 years, and this is his last chance to demonstrate and prove his point, his proof of concept, and that's where his political capital economically is going to be spent. Maybe we should just come to that conclusion. It's not any more complicated than that. What do you think, Todd, before we get out of here? Quickly.
Ukraine is the budget, is the Epstein list. These are deep, deep, dark holes that you just don't expect to be different this time. I mean, the Epstein list was never just going to be dropped on somebody's desk. Trump is just not going to put his thumb on the scale and make it happen. There's too much grift.
We're going to stick around, do some more buy, sell, or hold in overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.